Right, well, welcome everybody to the annual Braintree monochrome competition. This year, something slightly different as we've got to do it via Zoom, so it's more of a PDI competition, but I felt at the time, and the rest of the members of the club thought it would be nice to keep on running this competition, even though we're in unprecedented times. And hopefully next year we can.
Oops. Sorry, Ian, I've muted all, which has included you. I'll be back in a minute. Hold on. When I find you in the list. Or you can unmute yourself.
Right, that's better. I'm unmuted now. So thanks. Seems to be a good attendance this year. Lots of people come along to have the competition. Right, I can see our judge there, Barbie. So I think without further ado, hi, good evening and welcome, and thank you for judging the competition tonight. And I think without further ado, we should get on and run the competition and see these images.
Okay, thanks.
There we go.
There we go.
Done.
All yours, Barbie.
Okay, this one I believe is called Gaslight. Yeah, certainly monochrome. Got some really big, bold contrast going on here with the blacked out shadows. I really like that shadow actually on the wall of the gentleman riding the bicycle and the lamppost directly in front of them in the shadow. Unfortunately, the gentleman himself on the bicycle is a little bit too blocked out for me. And I've looked at these on a couple of computers, by the way, because it's amazing how screens will differ from each other. So when I make these various comments, you might think, oh, it looks fine on my computer screen. So hence why I have looked at them on a couple of different ones. I'm currently looking at it on a retina screen, which actually is a pretty good definition. But I found the gentleman on the bicycle a little bit blocked out himself. You can see the back of them. It looks like an old-fashioned one, like World War II or something like that, with the military helmet on. But it's very difficult to distinguish the fact that he is actually on a bicycle. When I first looked at it, I didn't quite understand what was going on. And of course, the more I looked at it, the more you could start to see things like the spokes and things of the bicycle wheel. But that was my biggest problem, is the fact that he is such a major factor to the picture that he's really is lost the definition, whereas the wall itself and that wonderful shadow on the wall makes a picture in its own right, doesn't it? So I enjoyed that part of it. So we're going to start off with this one and give that a 6. Now I am having to be harsh because there is a lot of fabulous images here tonight, and of course you can't all get 10 out of 10. So I am using a fair range of the marks. So that one, I say, gets 6. Then this one is called Timed Canopy. I love the detail here, especially of the roof side itself. You can see the light coming through, but there's still detail in the light tones in the picture itself. And of course you can see the clock on the wall further down, and those handrails really lead you down into the picture very successfully. And I think the treatment that's being used here has been successful too, because it does help to bring out all the detail in the structure, which is important. Now, amazingly, there doesn't appear to be many people about, certainly not up on the top part of this structure. You can see some people, I think, in little shops below, but not above the top. Apart from when you follow that hand railing down, there is sort of half a figure on the edge on the right hand side as you look at it, which is a bit of a shame. Personally, I would like for the photographer to actually include a little bit more that side. And I don't mind the fact that we're being led down to some people. It acts as a stopping point. but half a person is not quite so successful, which is a bit of a shame. But I did like the way we have reflections there, the shiny surface of the floor, for example, which is reflecting the chrome work from the handrails. So I like that part of it. Also, the fact that you can move around towards that escalator. You're not barred in that area either. So that one scores 8. Yes, this one's called Watergate Bay. And I thought those two little figures were so important to be in the picture because without them, you would have found those little tracks would have led to nothing. So I thought that was important they were there. The tracks don't lead directly up to them, of course, but it does go in their direction and almost as if they're following those tracks along. Lovely atmosphere here with the misty clouds too, shrouding the background landscape. And even we have what appears to be like footprints, which also goes from the right hand side and actually cuts across those pair of tracks down towards the people. Also, what I thought was good on this one was the fact that the couple walking actually breaks through the horizon itself, or the edge of the water, so linking everything together. And they are one of the darkest parts of the picture. So it's not about the people at all, it's about the landscape. But by including the people, it adds a focal point and it also gives us a sense of scale. On the left-hand side, you can see again a sense of recession by the darkest rock right on the edge. And then as you can see, the rock formations and the land gradually diminishes as you go through the picture. The only thing, which perhaps I might have done, was try and darken down that top right-hand area, because that is actually the lightest part of the picture. And of course, your eye goes to the lightest part. And on this occasion, we are actually being drawn up and out of the picture. I'm now trying to work out whether there's a few little dust marks. I'm not sure whether there's some little dust marks actually on the picture or on my screen. I've got a feeling it might be my screen, so I should ignore them. But this one I scored 8.5, so I thought you really have got some lovely atmosphere going on in the picture. Okay, as you can see, this one's simply called Wren, a small, tiny little bird, but it's filled up in the frame here, just perched on this little branch, which is a nice angle to the picture. The bird is not as sharp as perhaps I'd like it to be. So I've looked at these on a couple of pictures, and this actually on the retina screen looks probably the sharpest of all, but it's still not as sharp as I'd like it to be. And what I found most disappointing really was that white area of the background, because again, it's the lightest part and it almost overpowers the bird itself because it is so bright. Now, the photographer has zoomed in close to try and fill the frame, which actually helps a little bit by filling the frame, but feels almost a little bit uncomfortably large in the picture. But my main thing, I think, is that background. If you darken down, given it a slight vignette, I think that would have helped even better still. But there is some good detail on the plumage. And I love the fact that the bird has got a catchlight in the eye. That is important. It's just as important with animals as it is in people to have some life within the subject matter. And we have that here. And because we've done a slight turn of the bird, we now can appreciate not only the plumage, but the length of the beak, the shape of the beak, etc., which is a good indication of the type of bird. So the wren gets 6. Yes, then we have Fisherman. I thought this was lovely when I first saw this. I thought I really liked the treatment that is being given. It's almost like a glamour glow, isn't it? And that helps, I think, adds to the atmosphere of the mists rising up around the boat. Now you've got two gentlemen in the boat. It's a shame that the one on the left is actually bending down, so we're not actually seeing the full shape of that particular fisherman. But we can see the fishing poles. You can see what they're actually doing. I quite enjoyed the bank of trees behind them too, the mist beginning to rise up amongst the trees. The thing I would have changed on this is that little black area at the top left-hand side of the picture. I'm presuming it's cloud formation or something like that. But because it's right on the edge, once you've spotted it, your eye keeps going to it. And I really wanted that soft, misty feel right across that top area. I did love those grasses that you've included in the picture, particularly those ones on the right. That would have been even better still if we could have had a few on the left-hand side. But nonetheless, I love the delicacy which is coming through on this image. So the Fisherman scored 7. Ah, yes, then we get the one called Reflection. I don't recognize where it is. It looks like some sort of art gallery, but when you're actually seeing it this way, when you first look at it, it looks as if you're looking right down a tube, a big tunnel of some sort, which is fascinating. But then the more you look at it, you can understand that you're actually looking in a reflective surface. So you're getting the roof type and the sides of the building being reflected in this mirror effect in the bottom. Quite often you get these in cathedrals, don't you? So you can see the detail in the roof by looking down at the mirror. And this is a very similar thing. But I think it's worked because you do now have that barreling effect. We also have some really good detail here, from right through from the blacks to whites and all the various tones in between. So it's been handled very well as a monochrome image. And I think it really does suit the monochrome image in the picture. So that one scores 8. Okay, then we have a picture called Reflections. Looks as if it's some sort of art structure, perhaps in a sculpture park or something like that, where you have again, various reflective surfaces standing in the park itself. And then we have somebody being reflected in it. I'm presuming it's the photographer because they seem to be having their arm out. So I'm imagining it's a self-portrait and they're holding either a phone or a camera and photographing themselves in the various reflective surfaces. Of course, the person who's actually taking the picture could be totally different to the person that's being reflected, of course. So it gave this unusual feeling because you've got these various slices of this person in the scene. It didn't quite work for me because the lady's face is right on the left-hand piece of the structure. And I think it would have worked better if they'd have been more central or even more to the right because they're actually looking out of the picture. So it didn't quite work for me because it felt a little bit muddled and not enough of the person in those various reflective areas. So where the lady was when she took the picture, it might have looked far better. You might be able to see multitudes of the face in each of those structures. But this way, we're not really. We're seeing sort of half a person in each of them, which didn't quite work for me. But again, we've handled the tones very well. There's a real mixture between blacks through to whites, although it is a little bit light of the sky above it. Luckily, those trees, I suppose, helps to mask the whiteness of the sky. So reflection scores 6. Ah, yes, then we have Steveonzo. Lovely looking dog, isn't it, here? And really, to me, it was all about the dog. The dog is looking almost in our direction. Some beautiful texture on the fur of the dog too, which really comes into its own. But unfortunately, I didn't feel the gentleman had a great deal of interest because he's looking down at the dog and not at us. I suppose you could say, well, it makes all the emphasis back onto the dog. But the gentleman does take up a fair size in the picture. Also, it's very grainy, especially in the background. And I'm presuming it's to do with the treatment which has been added, perhaps something like tonal contrast or HDR, which has created some noise in the background. And I think what we needed to do, if you're going to add a filter like this, is to then history back. So you've got the softness in the background, or denoise just the background. So we still have that wonderful detail on the dog, but we're not being distracted by the various noise in the background itself. We have various windows and things in the background, so it gives you a feeling that perhaps they're indoors, even though the gentleman is wearing a coat, or it could be that he's just outside a building itself. But it's been handled well, as you can see here. They're not too bright at all, and keeps our attention on the two. So Steveonzo scores 7.5. Yes, then we have this unusual one called Holding the Mask. And again, it gives that impression that it's a reflection, but there is no camera anywhere in the picture itself. So it's just the model holding the mask, but it's all broken up in different slices. It reminds me when I used to do prints in the dark room, I'd literally slice the prints up and put them together again, sometimes using 2 or 3 of the same print in order to create this effect. So it reminded me good old darkroom days. But I thought this was very effective, and it works because you can still decipher exactly what's going on. The girl in the center, the main features, for example, the eye either side of the nose seems to work. Everything in that central area is very effective, and then we're being broken up as we go further out of the picture. And we have the lovely darkness around it too, which I think is important for a picture such as this. Good detail. There's certainly some punch going on in here without losing detail in the girl itself or in the mask. And I think the mask is just a definite extra element to add to the eeriness of exactly what's going on in the image. So we're going to hold on to that one temporarily. Okay, then we have open all hours. I think we can all recognize this as part of London, the Scoop, right down by the embankment itself. Wonderful detail in those buildings in the background, been photographed at night, luckily not been taken too later on. We've waited for the sun to go down, but the sky is not jet black. And that's helpful on several levels because it allows for those buildings to still be fairly light. We've got all the lights on inside, but it leaves some detail in the pathway and the angles around the scoop too. We have reflections on the ground, so it's obviously been raining. Again, that adds an extra element to it. It is a shame that it's a little bit tight in the frame, particularly on that right-hand side where the handrail itself is actually touching the edge of the picture, and at the bottom there, by the circular end of the rail itself, is also at the bottom there, is very close to the edge or touching the edge. I know it's difficult. I've tried these myself. You do need a wide angled lens in order to do so. But if it was possible, I'd like to have seen a little bit more in the picture. It might have been worthwhile just turning the camera very slightly at an angle to get in that right hand side, and even tilt down slightly too, because we could afford to lose a little bit at the top of the picture too. And it's a shame because there's all the elements there which I needed. That light, the lamp itself is lit, but it's not overpowering. It allows still for us to be able to appreciate the buildings all around it, and including the lights in the building by the scoop itself. So nothing is too heavy, and it's all very pleasing on the eye. So that one scores 8. Oh yes, then we come across the African darter, nicely positioned in the frame itself. It's standing on this piece of wood, looks as if it's well weathered and been dead for quite some time, the tree itself, and it's looking through the picture. Unfortunately, I think we could do with a little bit more room on the right hand side for it to actually look into. And again, it's quite a noisy picture. And I don't know whether it's because the photographers tried to sharpen the bird or not. But if you do that, like I said, you need to denoise the background because you can notice the grain quite significantly, particularly the larger the screen is that you're looking at them, the more obvious it becomes. So there was a couple of little issues with it, but I did love the shape of the bird, the fact that you can see the head and the beak very well indeed, and good plumage detail and feathers on the bird itself. And even the structure, even though it's quite large in the frame, I thought it was suited to the bird that we're looking at here, the African darter. So that one scored 7.5. Oh, then we have Alone and Sad. Yes, she does look rather sad, doesn't she? We've taken this, I suppose, almost a side issue from her shoulder, from that direction, but she's turned the head, which actually becomes engaging. We get drawn into her lovely eyes, and you've got really good detail in the face and hair, despite the fact that it looks as if it's a night scene. It don't feel as if it's been flashed out at all. It's been handled extremely well regarding the exposures. I weren't so crazy on those out of focus blobs of, I presume they're street lights in the background there. I agree, it actually does show the fact that it is a street scene, but I found I was being pulled away from her face and looking towards these blobs of light. So personally, I would have got rid of them. You can have negative space, it's fine. And you get a sense of a wall or something in the background there, and perhaps even a little bridge. I don't mind the subtleties of those. It was the light areas which I became more concerned with. Beautiful detail in her eyes, a lovely twinkle in the eyes too. And I'm glad to see that the photographer wasn't tempted to get the girl to smile at the camera. It would have lost the whole feel of this alone, sad and alone. But I think get rid of those lights, and I think, yeah, that would have made a lot better picture. So that one scored 7. Yes, the Camarg Horses. We've seen quite a few of those over the last decade. They become very, very popular. And you can understand why. When you look at these horses, they're fabulous, aren't they? Especially when they're all running and they're creating this wonderful atmosphere and movement within the picture, especially the way the dust is being kicked up all around. So it's understandable why people go to the Camarg to photograph the horses. Unfortunately, this one I felt was a bit muddled. There's a few too many horses, particularly, I suppose, on the right hand half of the picture, we're getting the heads disappearing behind the other horses in front of them. So they don't become quite so interesting. For me, the left-hand half of the picture is wonderful because getting the heads in between the heads of others. And of course, that one furthest on the right-hand side too works for me. It's these other horses behind which are really being hidden and become a little bit lost within the picture scene. But again, it's been handled very well regarding the blacks and the whites and all the lovely tones in between, which is important for this sort of picture. I also enjoyed that you almost got like a contre-jour effect, which is lighting up the manes of the horses. And that helps to add to the atmosphere. But we still managed to handle the detail in the front of the horses. They're not almost in silhouetted shapes. You can still see some good detail in them. So that one scored 7. Yes, this one, I see you, Scroat. And I like the fact that the policeman coming towards you in a riot squad situation, but they had this one with the visor up looking directly at us. And that really does bring us into the picture and feel as if you're in the thick of things. So it has a photojournalistic approach. And that certainly works as monochrome, doesn't it? Because you always tend to associate photojournalistic pictures with being in black and white. So I love that feeling with the police either side and bringing us down to that gentleman's face. What is a shame is that gentleman on the right-hand side has turned and he's got his visor up too, but that's cutting across the picture and actually intrudes into the face of that policeman that we're being drawn down towards. And that's a great shame. There's nothing the photographer could have done about it because it's obviously as is in that situation. But it does cut across, as you can see, particularly right across the chin of that policeman. Now, if the other one had stayed facing forward, that would have been cracking. But this, unfortunately, is one of those where initially I saw it and I thought, oh, yeah, brilliant. But then the more I looked at it, the more I started to think, I don't know, it is becoming irritating that the white visor creates that distraction. It looks as if it's in London. I don't know whether it is, but you can see the wonderful pillars in the background. Reminds me of around Trafalgar Square, that sort of area. And I just imagine, can't you, the riot police in London too is one of the situations you're likely to come across them. But again, good blacks and whites, little light in places, but that helps, I think, to add to the reflective feel of their visors. So that one got 8. Yes, this Spoonbill Preening, fabulous picture of the bird with the wing display as it's lifting both the wings up, some fabulous lighting underneath. Surprising really that you've managed to get such good detail in the bird as it preens. The softness of the water around, I don't know how it's been achieved, but it gives that feeling of mist off the water whilst it's still pretty dark. So all the light is on the bird, which constantly draws you back to the bird itself in the center of the picture. We get a little hint of the reflection in the water too, but not overly. We didn't need to see the whole of the reflection. And I think sometimes people do get a little overawed with the reflection and try to add the whole thing, and then it becomes split down the middle. This is great as it is, showing us the bird, all the lovely detail, and just a hint of the reflection. So I thought that was fabulous, and we're going to hang on to that one. Yeah, the corner, a race going on here, and you can see the 3 motorcyclists as they're leaning, coming round the bend. all our attention is on that foreground one. He's the sharpest, and you get a feeling of the speed of the wheel spinning behind him and throwing up the mud. We then have number 17 on the right hand side, beginning to drift out of focus, but still quite obvious of what's going on. And then the third one on the left hand side, further behind, slightly more diffused, especially with all that dust being thrown up all around. But threes work better than any other number, doesn't it? So I think the photographer has worked this one very well, captured the right moment in time with the right amount of dust everywhere around it. Room for us to look into, for them to move into, and without losing any of the atmosphere around the back area of the bikes, and certainly been handled very well regarding the various tones within the picture. So that's another one we're going to hang on to, please. Yeah, a more tranquil picture here of Melton Church. We have the church, which is the top half of the picture, and then the bottom half is being using the river, showing the reflection of the tower. And then we have these wonderful reeds, which are lighter in tone, but breaking through into the darker areas of the trees which surrounds the church itself. An interesting sky too, which helps, I think, to make that church tower stand out without it being too distracting. Just that the reflection for me wasn't particularly that strong. The strongest part in the reflection actually is the cloud formation, which is stands out very strongly in the river itself. But the tower is a little bit more subdued, and I felt it all felt to me a little bit top heavy because of that very reasoning. But there is some good detail in the grasses and the trees as we're being led towards the tower. And it is, like I said, a really good sky for this sort of picture. So that one scored 6. Yes, the picture called Chillo, the lady listening to music on her iPhones, on her headphones, and she's smoking a cigarette and she's enjoying the smoking, which is not good for me because I used to be a smoker years ago. And this is sort of encouraging me to smoke again because she looks totally as if she's thoroughly enjoying the enjoyment of the cigarette. And of course, we have that little trail of smoke that she's breathing out through her nose and through her mouth. So we've added that sort of connection between it. We have a little bit, I think, of smoke directly going up by her forehead, not particularly strong, and it almost becomes a bit of a distraction. And similarly, there's something, a little light area just behind her head too, going towards her neck. So it would have been lovely, I think, if we'd got rid of them and perhaps added, I know falsely, but added a little bit more smoke trail going directly up by the cigarette itself. But certainly some really good quality in the lady's hair, beautiful detail going on in the hair itself. A little bit light in places around the forehead and the nose. Noses can be a bit problematic, and I usually find I have to slightly darken down noses when I take photographs of people because that does tend to catch the light. But certainly the photographer has achieved what they were hoping to achieve here, with showing the fact that she's totally at ease and chilled out, and a really good dark black background too. And for a change, like I say, normally I like people to look directly at the camera, but this one, we've got plenty of space for her to look into, and it wasn't about the character, and we didn't want eye-to-eye contact on this occasion because she does look as if she's totally in a world of her own, and just thoroughly enjoying the warm sunshine. So Chillo scored 8. Oh, yes. Then we have Mr. Nice. Um, I'll take the photographer's word for that because he doesn't look particularly overly friendly. We haven't got a big cheesy grin or anything like that. He's looking at us quite seriously. But I like the fact that we have that eye-to-eye contact and really is drawn us into to the picture. We've cropped quite dramatically, haven't we? We've cropped the top of the hat off and the base of his chin is hidden a little bit by the arm of his jacket, but beautiful quality going on here, and the twinkle in the eyes too. And even despite the fact that they're wearing a hat, there is some lovely detail on the face, even on the forehead, where you can see that the wrinkles as he's looking directly at us. A little bit of a light area around the rim of the hat. Whether the photographers tried to darken things down at the background, I don't know, but it's sort of left a little rim light around underneath the rim of the hat, the brim, and a little bit on the top on the right hand side too, which I thought was a little bit distracting. And similarly, we have a little white blob on the middle of his hat too, just above the band. Probably a bit of dust or something like that. But again, I'd been tempted just to clone that out to take away any distractions. But I thought that was a really good portrait of the gentleman. You really have that gritty feel to the face, and I like that really direct stare. So the Mr. Nice scores 9. Okay, then we go on to elegant display. These orchids coming through the picture, lovely black background to make it stand out well. But then we've given it the sepia tone. And I must admit, I query why the photographer has done this treatment to the orchids themselves. They almost makes them look wooden because of the colorations of the sepia. Personally, I think this really does cry out to be in colour rather than monochrome full stop. But because of this coloration being included, the sepia, like I said, it gives that wooden feel about the picture. There's certain areas which I think needed a bit more light between those 3 little buds at the bottom, for example, linking towards the flower heads themselves. It's very, very dark and we're losing the feel of the stem in that area, but certainly some good quality in the flower heads themselves, and hence deserves a 7. Then we have Reach for the Sky. A brilliant angle taken here, looking directly up using a wide-angled lens, because we've got some distortion going on in the picture, but obviously that's what the photographer is wanting. They're not trying to show us a record of the building, but creating more of an artistic impression by using this wide-angled lens and getting buildings in all the way around, which I thought was great, and particularly with the circular one going up that center in between all the buildings. It was just a shame for me, those clouds. I didn't want the clouds in the picture because they're the lightest parts, aren't they? The whites, and they sort of cut into the buildings. Whether the photographer could have waited a little bit longer for those clouds to disperse, I don't know, but they became a distraction for me, and personally I would have cloned them out. Even the one that's reflected in the building on the right hand side, I think I might have been tempted to get rid of, because there is so much potential on this one, but we needed to keep it a little bit simple because there's a lot going on. It's quite a busy picture with the various buildings, but I think it was worthwhile doing, but perhaps not on at this particular moment. I think we needed a more simplistic sky for this to work and keep our attention on those buildings rather than being drawn to those cloud formations. So I love the idea, and I think it's been handled well regarding the lighting even in the shadow areas of those buildings, there is good detail. So Reach for the Sky scored 7. Yep, triple petals. This time we have one large flower head in the center of the picture and 2 smaller ones either side. I'm not sure again whether it particularly suits the monochrome format on this one, because there is no whites in the picture and very limited blacks, to be fair. The only blacks really is just around the edge of the center of the middle flower.
I didn't get that.
And the 2 little flowers either side, which is flanking the main flower head, are merged towards it as well. I want some separation between those flowers and the petals of the main flower. So unfortunately, this one didn't quite work for me, which was a shame, because I think, again, you've handled the exposure very well indeed. And there is some good detail in the main flower and that little flower on the right hand side, but I wanted some separation and perhaps it would have worked even better in colour. So triple petals scores 6. Yes, it certainly gives the impression of pain, this one, with the hand over the head as if she's got a headache, and the hand pointing out towards the camera as if to say, go away, you know, I want peace, I want quiet. But a couple of things really. One, I'd like to see that hand even stretched out closer towards the camera to make more of the hand itself. And also, there is no good blacks in the picture. There's overall dark grey for the background. Again, I looked at this on a couple of computers, and both times I had that impression that we needed some really good blacks in this picture. It has a lot of light tones. The hand is a little bit overly bright. Both hands actually are a little overly bright, as is the forehead too needs toning down. So I think we need to try and readjust this one, because I think the idea has worked very well. It's purely the after processing which needs a bit more work done to it. Darken down those blacks and tone down the highlights too. And then I think you've got a really good picture. So that one scores 7. Founders of Hungary, these statues look fascinating, don't they? The various statues themselves, with this one main one in the foreground against the pillar behind it is very effective. Quite an interesting sky, but I think the photographer has used this after treatment of sharpening or tonal contrast or something like that, and particularly those clouds on that left hand side as we're looking at it feel too sharp, and we want to soften the sky down, give us a bit of separation, because there's quite some distance between those statues and that sky, but the sky seems to be equally sharp as the statues themselves. So I think we've gone a little bit over the top. Yes, by all means, sharpen pictures, etc. But remember, the sky should be soft and more diffused. So it nearly works, but not quite for me. And that scores 6.5. Breaking the rule of 6. Twee title, I suppose, really, for what is a good natural history picture. And I love the fact that we have so many of them in the picture, all the backs of them, and then this one head sticking up, which is our focal point, and we needed that when there are so many of the other hippopotamuses in the picture. Bit of water in the foreground, we might not have needed quite so much. I think I might have been tempted to crop a little bit out at the bottom there, just to keep all our attention on those faces of the hippos. And I like the fact that the more you look at this, the more you keep seeing little eyes peering in different directions. And certainly some good control with the tones around that central area. A little bit light around the top. I might have been tempted to just darken down slightly that top quarter of the picture. But overall, I thought it was a really interesting shot, and it does work in monochrome because there's not a great deal of colour in it, is it really? They're all sort of this muddy brown and grey colorations anyway. So I think it's one natural history shot which really does quite suit the monochrome. And breaking the rule of 6 scores Nian. Head of the herd is male stag looking directly at the camera. Beautiful light on those antlers, and stands out well, doesn't it, against the darkness of the background. Now I presume this has been taken early in the morning, so it looks as if there's breath coming out of the deer itself, the stag, which is actually surrounding the head, which unfortunately is a little bit on the light side. We wanted the lightest part to be the stag's head rather than the background. However, having said that, interesting textures in the background, they've been thrown out of focus, so keeps our attention on the head of the deer itself. I'm not sure whether there's another deer directly on the right hand side of it, but it doesn't become too much of a distraction. So this one scored 8. Yeah, then we have this unusual one called Nowhere. And it is unusual. It caught my attention as soon as I saw it. And I thought it was fascinating. The man with the suitcase and that interesting shadowy shadow on the wall itself, which is very soft, but it works, doesn't it? And then we go across to the window, which has been handled well considering the light is coming through, and there is a ragged curtain hanging down from the wall, and then cracked walls directly on the right hand side. So this one certainly captured my imagination when I looked at it. But it's another one, the more I looked at it, the more I thought, I'm not so sure that I like the fact he's facing directly next to a wall. He's looking at a wall. And I felt it ought to have a door frame there. So it looks as if he's leaving the room rather than standing facing the wall, because it sort of begged more questions than it answered for me. Why is he holding a suitcase but facing the wall? It seemed a strange pose to have. But if I'd been a doorway, then it would have made sense. So I liked the idea of it, the concept, and certainly been well handled. Some lovely detail in here, and has that air of mystery too. But the more I looked at it, the more it worried me of why he is facing the wall. So that one scored 9. Yeah, another one with fabulous detail on the girl, her clothing, interesting clothing too, especially with those high heels. The shape of the pose of the body was great. She's got the tilt back of the head. She's all against this dark background with her dark clothes, but they stand out because of the lighting's been handled brilliantly. And she's playing the violin. Unfortunately, I found the bow cuts across almost as if she's sawing the head off. And I'd have preferred it if there'd been a slight angle to that bow, either slightly up or slightly down, rather than directly across. And it's a minor point, but as you can see tonight, there is some fabulous pictures, and I'm having to be a little bit nitpicky. I like the fact that we have the shadows along the floor there of her legs, so you can see that the light is coming through on that right hand side. It has created this light triangular feel to the image, but it didn't particularly worry me because everything stands out well, and the lightest part really of the picture is her face, which is obviously the important part of the image, and a lightness on her hand and the bow itself, which again is all part of the storytelling of the picture. So a musical pose scores 8.5. And then Maria Lara, as we've got here, a sort of a high key type image with a really stark white background. But I loved her pose, the hair, hands in her hair. She's got the tilt of the head down, but the eyes are back looking directly at us, which has great dramatic impact on the image. I'd love to see this one as a print, I must admit. This is probably one of the first I've come across, which I thought really does need to be a print, because we have that white background. It's quite harsh on the eyes when you're looking at this being projected on the screen. But it is a fabulous picture, beautiful quality. Even the light areas on her satin jacket, where the light has hit on the left-hand side, has been handled brilliantly. It really gives that wonderful sheen to the picture and beautiful eye-to-eye contact. So Maria Lara gets 8.5. Is this one simply called Tree? And it is all about the tree, isn't it? With the skeletal feel, the tracery of those branches against the lightness of the trees in the background. The light has come through the clouds, as you can see there, very, very heavy clouds, but the light has come out through the clouds and picking up the landscape directly behind the tree, which helps for that to stand out. You've got a bank of the trees and bushes either side of the tree itself, which is very useful. It's just a little bit light, I think, in that middle area. Although this is meant to demonstrate the sun trying to break through, I just found it a little bit too bright in places, almost going down to the base white. So I think we just need to try and tone that down very slightly. And on my screen, I'm not going to take points for off because it could be to do with the screens, but you seem to got wavy lines across the top quarter of the picture, top third to a quarter. And I don't know whether it's to do with the screens I've been looking at them on, or whether they are genuinely there. But that if it is there, then it needs to be addressed before you print this out as a print, because it will become even more obvious, I think, at that stage. But the tree scores 8. Okay, simply called Platform. Looking down onto a railway station platform, we can see the lights and the train station itself. Very foggy night by the looks of it, because it's dark, and also gives that feeling of fog everywhere. We have these wonderful little lampshades in the picture, trying to break through some light, possibly not quite enough. I think I might have been inclined to help them along a little bit because they don't seem to be throwing much light anywhere at all. So that let it down for me a little bit. Overall was quite dense and little detail being seen, not only because it's dark, but because it's also a foggy night too. But it does give you that feeling of the atmosphere of the denseness and the dismal weather conditions at the time. And we are being led through with those barriers either side, leading you down to the next level in the picture. So Platform scores 7. Windmill with clouds. Yeah, a great cloud formation actually in the background. But it's another one where we've got the light coming through those heavy clouds and picking out the lovely light on the windmill itself, those sails standing out against the sky and bringing out some good detail on the brickwork of the windmill. It's a little bit grainy overall, again in that sky, a little bit over noisy. We needed to try and simplify that and denoise the sky. Excuse me. And I think we could have done with a bit more base to the picture too. You couldn't have tilted the camera further down because you'd lost the top of the windmill sails themselves. So we needed a wider angled lens, or if it was possible to stand further back, because it is a little bit too close for me for the base of the picture. But some super lighting on this one. So Windmill and Cloud scores 6. Yes, there, but for the grace of God go I. And there's obviously a homeless person sitting in the street. She's got her eyes closed, and whether she's asleep or not, I don't know. But this one is a definite Marmite picture, isn't it? Rusty's seen these after I'd judged them and scored them, and he loved the picture. But I wasn't so keen for the very reasons he liked it. So there you go. So try this with another judge. But for me, I didn't like that scratched effect, old film type effect being used in the picture. It does add to the grunge, you know, the desolation of the poor woman. And Rusty liked it for those very reasons. But for me, it didn't work. I also didn't like the McDonald carton, which is sitting by her side. To me, it looked too modern. If you're trying to create this antiquated feel with a distressed film look overall, I felt we didn't need the McDonald carton sitting by her side. And we've also cropped the feet off, and it appears to be just the feet. I wonder whether it would have been better if you'd got in slightly closer or further back again in order to include the whole of the lady's legs in the sleeping bag. So unfortunately for me, I gave that one a 6. Okay, this one's simply called Bench, and you can see it has fascination because to start with, the bench is in water, so it's obviously been flooded everywhere. And normal circumstances, people could walk and sit down on the bench and enjoy the view. But obviously, the riverbanks has broken and the water has flooded everywhere, which includes around the bench itself. It's a shame really that there is so much on the left hand side, because to me all the information is on the from the middle to the right onwards, and there isn't a great deal of interest for me on the left hand side, and particularly I suppose because it's light on that edge too. I think we need to at least darken down that edge, if not crop in further, almost into a square. For me, I think would work even better on this one, because you've still got various interests. Even the water, the flow of the water on the right hand side has a lot more interest for me than the flow of the water on the left hand side. So it might purely be needing a bit of a crop, I think, to make this one a lot better. But it certainly has some interest, and I like that little jut of the grass which hasn't being flooded, which comes into that area of the picture too. So that one scores 6. Then we have Owl, a little owl sitting on a post with some beautiful rim light all the way around the owl too. The background's been diffused, so it really keeps your attention on the little owl. The owl itself is looking directly at us, which is brilliant, because again we have that eye-to-eye contact, which is so important, and beautiful quality on the bird with the eyes and of the beak. The beak is equally important. Lovely plumage and feather detail, and just a little bit of the wood for the post for the little owl to sit on. So we're going to hang on to that one. Then we have Veiled Thoughts. as the lady is not looking to us, but looking out of the window. Perhaps she's waiting for somebody and she's just peeping through the curtains out of the window. So you get that lovely feel of what's going on. And then the netting, some sort of overlay has been used of netting as well, creating this extra effect of textures over the lady. Good detail in her. The lighting works very well by the light being reflected back from the window. It feels all like natural lighting, whether it is or not, I don't know, but it certainly gives that impression. And I love the softness being created with the netting. So we're going to hang on to Veiled Thoughts as well. Yeah, dandelion seed with water drops. Again, this probably would work better more as a print. As you can see, there is a lot of white on the picture. But I love the little droplets on that dandelion head itself, the simplicity of it, the fact that we have so much space around it. I enjoyed also that little shadow area at the stem of the dandelion head. But I wasn't so keen on the other shadow. I don't think we needed that. I think you could get rid of that altogether, because to me it became a distraction. And I want to keep this as simple as possible. We couldn't have the stem of the dandelion, obviously, without a shadow, because it would look as if it was floating. This way it feels as if it's trying to break through perhaps something like snow, but it was that heavy shadow directly underneath the head of it, which didn't work for me, and I just wanted to get rid of it altogether. But a lovely picture nonetheless, and like I said, I think that would really look smashing as a print. So 8.5 for dandelion seed with water drops. Yep, Sweet Dreams, another very, very pretty model, dressed in rather lacy, flowy costume amongst these bushes, and she's got her eyes closed as if she's dreaming, hence I suppose the title of Sweet Dreams. But I didn't particularly like her pose. She's all sort of crunched up, and to me it looked more as if she's afraid of the bushes which are surrounding her, rather than dreaming of sweet dreams. She looks fearful, and I think if her eyes were open I would have had more of that impression. But because she's got her eyes closed, it's sort of a mismatch of messages going on in the picture. But some lovely detail. She's wearing what appears to be a very light tone dress, but there's detail throughout, and all the bushes around her and the flower heads on them are lovely. So I gave that one 8.5. Then we have Misty Star. Beautiful feeling on this one. The atmosphere being created by that early morning fog. It gives that coldness to it. Particularly you can see the frost actually on the edge of the bankment itself. Really creates that crispness and coldness throughout the picture. And then the water almost mirror-like with the reflections, which work on this occasion because we have the two separate trees, quite strong in their composition against the water. And then in the distance, we have some more trees just filling up that area and just giving that feeling that there is more in the picture, but the fog is shrouding our viewpoint. So we're going to hold on to that one. Yes, then we have the Roar, the two lionesses together. I don't know whether they're straight lionesses, but they almost, the one on the lying down on the right there, sort of got patterns on its back, almost as if it's a cross between a lion and some other species, which adds to the fascination of the picture. interesting foreground too, but I wondered whether there's a little bit too much of the foreground. And I'd also be tempted to crop out on the right hand side too, because we're not showing the whole of the big cat, are we? We're not seeing its rear or its tail. And I think if you're going to start cropping, I think you need to crop a little bit more severely and turn this more into a portrait rather than a general viewpoint of it. So another one I think we really would come into its own if it was turned into a square, because there's some wonderful tones and contrasts going on here. And I think it is really worthwhile persevering with. So I gave that one 8. Mountain Winter Iceland. I love the vista on this one with the dark rocks in the foreground being led through to the lighter tones of the mountain itself with the snow-capped mountains in the distance. So you've got a lovely mixture of different shapes as you're looking through the picture. I think there is definitely some dust marks on this one, slightly out of focus blobs on that area of the sky on the left hand side. I think you'll find there's at least 3 which I've spotted there, and things like that do need addressing. If you're putting these in competition, check for things like dust marks in the sky. But I love the way we are being led through that rock formation itself leads you to the top of the mountains, and even though it's snow-capped, there is some good detail throughout the mountain sides. So I've given that one a 9. Yeah, then we have the back of the cormorant, have a wonderful wing display as it's trying to dry its wings. Looks as if it's standing on the ridge of a small waterfall or some sort there. And we're seeing the back of it, but we're seeing some good detail in the wings themselves. Unfortunately, the head of the cormorant is going out of focus. And really, we should have all the sharpness on the head of that cormorant and on the beak. If you look carefully, the sharpest part is actually the tail of the cormorant, and the rest of it is going a little bit soft. And it doesn't help, I suppose, with the light background too. It sort of emphasizes that there isn't the sharpness that we need around that head. So I think we need to try and sharpen that one up a little bit around the head area. So the cormorant scores 6. Another natural history picture here, grey heron in the reeds, absolutely shrouded by the reeds around it. Almost helps to camouflage the heron, doesn't it, with all those reeds around it. You get a little feeling of the water, the ripples and reflections in the foreground. But for me, it was all a little bit too dark all the way around it. I know I keep mentioning about trying to give a slightly darker vignetting to hold you in the picture, but for me this one was a little bit too much, too heavy for me. But again, it's a Marmite one because Rusty actually liked the fact that it was very dark all the way around, so we differed in opinions on that one. But once you've spotted the heron, yes, there is some good detail in the heron. It's just, to me, it was a little bit muddled and confusing overall, so I gave that one 7. Then we have Venice. It looks as if it's flooded, doesn't it? Because you've got the quayside there. You can see the bollard, which is the ship has been tied up to it. We can't see the ship. That's out of sight. But we have these 2 people. Looks like a really wet weather day with the brollies up, a dull, dismal sky in the background there. But for me, it was that bollard which ruined it for me because it's cutting into the gentleman and the 2 begin merged together, and I wanted to see some separation. So if he'd have stood slightly more to the left, I think we could have got away with it. As it is, I think as a photographer, it might be worth cloning out that bollard altogether. So it gives us those three elements then, the two fancy street lights, and then the couple together on the quayside itself. So it nearly made it for me, but not quite. So Venice scored 8. Yep, night sky above the quiver trees. I thought this was lovely. I should imagine this works equally well in colour as it does in monochrome. But it's because of that sky, we needed something really strong sky for the quiver tree, which is actually almost in silhouette, isn't it? You can just see the shape of it, which is a fabulous shape, of course, and just get a little hint of the foreground land. Not a great deal of detail there, but just enough that we needed to see, because to me it really was more to do with the sky, and we were trying to find something of interest. It's a bit like sunsets, isn't it, really, and sunrises. The sky might be brilliant, but you still need something of interest in the foreground, and I think the photographer found the ideal thing to put in that foreground area. So we're going to hang on to that one, please. Modern Thameside architecture. It almost looks like a little model village, doesn't it? And I think that's partly to do with the treatment that's been used on this particular picture. It's almost in black or white for the buildings themselves. Very little sort of tones in between, which actually makes them stand out. It's really good contrast in those buildings. And then this interesting sky which tops it off, and you notice that sky hasn't got the similar treatment that the buildings have, so it gives some sense of depth to the picture. But the water has this unusual texture to it as well, so it's almost sort of black and white and very little tones in between for the water as well. So it sort of worked to me, particularly with that tower and all the little flats, and showing the sheer size of that tower when you look at the high-rise flats anyway, and then the tower is at least twice the size of that. So I thought this was a good concept and well handled and positioned in the frame, and that scored 8.5. This is called It Was So Big. Well, I'm presuming they're referring to the fisherman on the boat with his two hands up, as if he's saying it was this big. But to me, it didn't get that message across to me. To me, it looks as if he's either trying to chase the gulls away, or he's just thrown some fish to the gulls, and they're all flying down to get whatever scraps he's thrown off the boat. So it didn't really come across to me the message that the title gave. There is also two men on the boat, the one with the arms out, and then next to him on the right hand side of him is another gentleman. I'm not sure what he's doing, whether he's pulling in the nets or something, but he's lost a little bit amongst the machinery on the boat. I'm glad to see that the mast is cutting through that horizon, given us a linkage between the boat and the sky. But I'd like to see a little bit more tonal contrast, or a bit more contrast in that boat itself, because the whole thing is quite a grey picture, and we need a little bit more oomph for the boat. But I like the composition on this one. Got plenty of room for the boat to sail into, and those gulls actually help to fill up those areas around the sky. That one scored 6. Hello. Then we have Posh Huts on Stilts. Good viewpoint, this one, using a relatively slow shutter speed to create this almost mirror effect in the water, getting rid of any movement and waves in the water itself. And then having the slow shutter speed created this slowness in the sky too. Unfortunately, I've seen quite a few pictures of this lately, most of them in colour, and I think it works better in colour because there doesn't seem to be much difference between the various huts in monochrome. So I really think it would work better in colour. Now, obviously, you can understand why it's not, because it's a monochrome competition, but they do have some lovely subtle shades, and that's lost in this picture. But I still think it's a cracking shot. I think that it's been handled really well, and I still love it. So that one scored 9. Then we have Out of the Dark. Now, I'm not sure whether the train itself is coming towards us or going away from us. But we're looking down this very dark tunnel and coming to the train with people on the tracks, on the train itself. And you can see the light cast on the tracks. So it leads you towards the train. But it is very, very dark. And I felt we could do with a little bit more light in the mid-tone areas around that tunnel, just to give you more of a feeling of the tunnel effect as we're looking at it. So that one scored 7. Plenty of room for the wingspan as they go up through the picture. Unfortunately, they're very close to the right hand side. You really need more space in front and less space behind on the swans. And they're not as sharp as I'd like them to be. Now, you can understand why. They're actually flying through the sky, so it's not easy to do. But those two things put together, I'm afraid, sort of let it down. It's a shame. We've got the two of them. I don't even mind the fact that the head of one is against the body of the other because it does stand out quite well. But the head of the bird flying further out of the picture, there's very little detail in that area. So Swan scored 6. Memories of times past, and that's been emphasized, hasn't it, by giving it the sepia tone. It immediately gives an old antiquated feel to the picture. Now, this is a very busy picture, and really I think this would probably work very well as a very large print on a wall, and certainly gives you lots of time to look at it and appreciate the different elements in the picture itself. I don't even mind the big McDonald's sign on the left-hand side. That's part and parcel of American streets, isn't it, really? And on the right-hand side, you've got Bank of America. Unfortunately, we've cut out the last couple of letters of that. And if you're going to have writing in a picture, it should be able to read it quite well. And although your brain can fill up that area and tell you exactly what it says on the poster, I think it would have been nicer still if we could have got the whole word in, even to the fact that you could have cut into the M of McDonald's just to show you a little bit more of the America part. But I love the busy street here, the feeling of what's going on in the picture. Quite a light sky, but because of the sepia tone, I think you've even managed to get away with that because it's helped to tone it down slightly. So Memories of the Past scores 6.5. Yeah, running late, the two youngsters running down the platform, zooming to try and catch the train, although they seem to be laughing and smiling. And I think if I was late for the train, I wouldn't be laughing and smiling. I'd be a little bit more serious. But certainly great quality, particularly on the two figures, which is important. The rest of it you can see is fairly grey, but they're not. They've got some really good contrast on them. However, there is some highlights. The top of the shelter directly above the man's hat, for example, I think needs toning down. and some little bits on the train here and there. I think needs toning down a little bit. It's a few bright areas within the picture, but certainly captured the movement as they're running through the picture. They look genuinely as if they're running through the picture. So memory of running late scores 7. Yep, French windows, just picking out a small area of the building with this wonderful shutters. They certainly got interest there with this bottle, which is sitting on the window ledge itself, and this interesting lamp on the right hand side. So we have these various elements as you step through the picture. Again, we've given it some sort of treatment. I think perhaps a little bit over the top. Everything is very, very gritty because of the treatment that's been used. And I felt we needed some smoothness, especially in the glass of the windows. Didn't really need that treatment as well, just to give us a bit of separation, because now everything seems to be on a similar plane because of the treatment used. And I think it just needed to be toned down slightly and history back. So you've got a mixture of both textures and smoothness in the picture. We've lost that smoothness that I was looking for. So French windows scored 7. Yes, the Barbican stroller. We've given us an unusual feel to it, haven't we? With the treatment, again, the after treatment. But I like the pillars as we're being led through the picture and got a figure at the end, which is important. You can't just have a tunnel which leads to nothing. So we've got our stopping point as the man is walking back towards us. But the whole thing has got this distressed feel again, which really didn't work for me. It gave this really old-fashioned feel, almost as if you're looking through a pinhole camera, because we've got a lot of burnt out areas and blocked out areas, which on a personal level didn't particularly work for me. But again, try it with another judge and you'll probably have better luck. So Barbican stroller scored 6. Then we have trusting friends. The 2 dancers here, if you call them dancers, appear to be ballet dancing upside down. I love the composition on this one, the curves of the body forms, the light and shade within the picture area, particularly on the one who's actually on her hands, balancing on hands. I thought the lighting on that was very strong, but suited her body form. Whereas the other one is more hidden underneath the first girl, a little bit more shadow area in that area of the picture. But we're going to hold on to that one, please. Then we have hidden through a simple still life picture of these Chinese lanterns, I think they're called, aren't they? With the delicacy of the seed heads, the seed pods, the 3 of them. So 3 again work better than any other number. But then we've been overpowered by this black border, very, very heavy and large area. And it really should be about the simplicity and the softness and the high key effect of the seed heads. So I think we should have given it a very narrow border and not this heavy black one all around it. And again, I think probably it would work better as a print. So hidden fruit scored 6. Yeah, simplicity comes to mind when you look at this one, with using a slow shutter speed to create this ethereal feel of the water. But then we have the strength of the rocks on the right hand side, which really adds to the picture. So we have this movement in the sky, the smoothness of the water and the strength of the rocks. But then unfortunately the left hand side, very dark areas, and almost like a heavy vignette, but only on the left hand side. And even the darkness in the clouds didn't really quite work for me. I wanted to see more simplicity in that area to match up with the other side of the picture. So there's sort of like a little fence area which goes off into the water. I quite enjoyed that because that leads you off to what appears to be like a marker point which breaks through into the horizon further on into the left, but it's dwarfed by this heaviness of the clouds and that corner of the picture. So Estuary Light scored 7. It's homegrown cigar. I like this one. The lady's not looking at us, but again, she seemed to be enjoying her cigar and deep in thought. Going in close, head and shoulder shot, really. Got a feeling that she's sitting down because her leg, you've got the knee coming up there. But it's really, your eyes still go to the face of the lovely lady, down to the cigar, and then to this little tin that she's holding. So we have almost our 3 elements in the picture area. A simplistic background helps to make her stand out too, giving you that 3D feel to the image. So that one scored 9. The reeds at Melton Church. The reeds really are quite dominant in this picture, aren't they? It's all really, that is what the picture is more about, is those reeds in the foreground with a misty church in the background, because there's no detail really on that church at all. It's just the shape, and luckily Melton Church has got that wonderful spire which breaks through into the sky very well indeed and stands out for that reason. And then we have a reflection of that church, which luckily sort of fits in between those overhanging reeds on the edge there. But unfortunately, like I said, to me, it was more about the grasses rather than the church, and therefore didn't quite work so much for me. So that one scored at 6. Then we have Man in Hat. And yeah, it works well. It's a simple studio shot with a simplistic background, which is effective. We have that eye-to-eye contact that we're looking for, as it's a head and shoulder shot. The hat helps to frame the face. We have the beautiful twinkle in the eyes. We haven't got the cheesy grin, but he looks a very friendly chap, even though we have a direct stare between the photographer and the sitter. We're wearing a dark t-shirt. I might have been tempted to have asked him to wear a slightly lighter one, because the furthest shoulder away from us does tend to get a little bit lost into the same tones of the background. But some good detail on the face. You can even see the wrinkles. So not the most flattering of lighting sources, not for us women, but it adds character for a gentleman. So I quite enjoyed the lighting on that one. And Man in the Hat scores 8.5. Okay, do you want to go to the held images?
Right, we have 8 held images,
Okay.
which hopefully we should be able to come down here and see. We'll try and put them into some kind of order. Got those by wrong bottom, so we can see them along there. Do you want them put up in any particular order, or just start from the beginning again, Barbie?
Yes, just start at the beginning again, if you like.
Well, let's run through them all, and then you can come back and we'll start from the beginning, yeah?
Okay, lovely.
Should be one more on the end now, I think. Yep.
Trusting friends, that's it. That was the last one in the
That's it.
sequence.
So go through from the front.
Okay. Right, so the first one, which was holding the mask, I gave that one 10 because I thought that was an excellent example of this type of picture. And similarly with Spoonbill Preening, I couldn't falter. I couldn't see how you could possibly improve on this one. Such beautiful detail. So again, that one gets 10. And also with the motorbikes, another 10 for that. A brilliant action shot, really creating some wonderful atmosphere of the race. Now the owl I gave 9.5, and I think the reason I dropped half a point on this one is that it's not doing anything, whereas you saw the spoonbill preening had a bit of action to it, and which added a little bit more atmosphere. But I did love the rim light on this one, so that gets 9.5. Another super shot, which I really enjoyed with the treatment that the photographer has given by adding this netting overlay. The only thing was that the hand that she's holding the netting with is a little bit lost. So I dropped half a mark on this one, unfortunately, and that one gets 9.5. The Misty Star, again, a beautiful early morning shot, worth getting out of bed for, isn't it? In order to get pictures such as this. But I might have been tempted to just tone it down a little bit by that left-hand tree, the bank in the water area there is a little bit on the light side. So again, I dropped at half a point on mean like that. So 9.5. A night sky above the quiver tree. I'd be tempted to have used a torch or something just to lighten that trunk a little bit of the tree itself. So again, I've dropped at half a point, but I'm being mean. So 9.5. And the last one in the sequence, Trusting Friends, which I also held back. I loved the lighting on the girl in the upright position. I just thought it was a little bit heavy of the girl who was hiding underneath by her arms. Could have done with a little bit more light on that. So again, I've dropped that half a point, which was a shame because I love the shape and the feel of the picture. So another 9.5.
Lovely. Thank you, Barbie. Hopefully.
Hopefully we've got a result.
Yeah. We should be able to shut that down and run the competition again and find out how we're all done. Start the first image. Right, it should be able to go like that. So there's all our scores as they come up, and who was responsible for the images. When we get to the end of the scores, we find that Braintree had 43, Chelmsford had 51, Clacton had 48, Colchester 48.5, Notley 45.5, Housted 45. It's all very close.
It is.
Yep. Malden 50.5. Perfect 42.5. Springfield 46. And Sudbury 39. So that puts us with the winners this year, I believe, to be Malden. Is that right?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think somebody
Chelmsford.
got 51. Was it
Chelmsford.
Chelmsford?
Yep, Chelmsford at 51. Malden second at 50.5. Yep. Then Colchester at 58.5. Clacton. Great Springfield. Great Notley. Housted. Braintree and Sudbury. Is that correct? Oh no, we got a pair of feet. I'm missing one somewhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I haven't put a sixth. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. Right. Let's see if I can lose my score sheet and stop our share. Right, there we go. Go back to everyone in the gallery. Right, yes, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I've got Chelmsford first with 51. Malden second with 50.5. Colchester third with 48.5. Clacton fourth with 48. Springfield fifth with 46. Great Notley sixth with 45.5. Housted seventh with 45. Braintree eighth with 43. Feet ninth with 42.5, and Sudbury 10th with 39. Do you agree, Dave? He's still muted somewhere. I can find him in. Dave, where you gone?
Got to unmute yourself, Dave.
Yeah, can't even see him in my lists. He's dropped off. We do have trouble with Dave's internet. Hence, I've been running the Zoom this week. But it does look very much like we have lost our Dave. Never mind. Before, and the most important one as well, not only is there the Braintree Shield, but we have a trophy for the best image in the evening, which is dedicated to our ex-chairman, Mike Charles, the Mike Charles Trophy. And Barbie, do you have an image that is your image of the evening?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with the Spoonbill Preening. I thought that was a lovely shot.
Right. Do you happen to know what number it is?
Oh.
I can find it fairly quickly.
Hang on, no.
Spoonbill Preening, I think,
15.
was 15, yeah.
15. Right. See if we can find it and share it.
So normally I wouldn't recommend having natural history in monochrome, but the bird itself is monochrome, isn't it? It's white.
Yeah.
And it really was a lovely atmosphere to that picture.
Right. Somewhere along the line, let's shut that down. Right.
Well done, Tori and Housted.
Yeah, that one was actually Tori Andrews who've housed. So congratulations to Tori. So thank you very much, Barbie.
You're welcome.
Bobby, is that the image?
That's the one.
Lovely. So It's number 15. So it's a Housted image. If Housted can let me know the author.
Tori
Uh,
Andrews.
Tori Andrews.
Sorry, who, Andrews?
Tori, Tori.
Tori. Ah, Tori again. I believe Tori won it last year. No, she didn't. A couple of years ago.
No, great.
Because it's currently in Colchester at the moment, but I shall take a non-essential journey to Colchester, see Uncle Vic on his doorstep at a distance and collect the trophy, and then do a non-existent transfer to Housted.
Thank you, Barbie, and thank you, Andy.
Yes, thank you very much, Barbie. That was an excellent review of all the images. There were some really good ones in there. Very hard to choose. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Chelmsford.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Well
Hi,
done.
hi Andy and hi Ian. I've got the trophy here that we received last year, so I'm happy to hold on to it. Thank you very much, Barbie. It was a very interesting evening, and it's great to see you all, even though we can't be there in person.
See, Vic, there is rhyme in my reason for not collecting the shield straight away. Sadly, I've got